So I'm really honored and pleased to be here. You have to understand, I never ran for anything in my life. I never even ran for student council. But I decided that this year, and it happened on March 3rd, that I needed to run. And so I want you to think back to 2 years ago, and what you were doing, and what you were thinking, and how you were contributing, and think about what you were doing then and what you were doing now. 2 years ago, I was doing a lot of volunteer work, but running for office did not cross my consciousness. And then Donald Trump was elected. And then I looked at what was going on in the state, and I said, I need to step up my game. 2 years ago, I was a fire commissioner. 4 years ago, I was doing long-range planning teams in the school system. This year, I'm running for state representative. And it's a different type of experience. And I think if you think about what you were doing 2 years ago, you're doing something more and different now. One of the reasons why I ran is if you look at what is going on in Washington, they look what happens up and down the ticket, whether it's at the congressional level, the Senate level, or down at my little level as state representative. They count who wins, who loses, margin of victory, margin of loss. Tom O'Day is my opponent. The last two election cycles, he ran against the Green Party. Do you know how many people there are in the Green Party in Wilton and New Canaan? Somewhere less than what's on one hand. Karen's around, she can tell me. So his margin of victory was about 89 or 90%. Someone who represents a mainline party, who's a mainline person, changes that equation significantly. And so that's the first thing that triggered my need to run. The second is, did you hear Tom's introduction of Mr. O'Day? Oh, he's the guy who never shows up here. So if you're from Wilton, you don't know who he is, even though he represents 1/3 of Wilton. And my promise, and I've knocked on over 2,000 doors, and they go, Tom who? And not Tom, not Mr. Dubin, Mike Dubin, is to represent Wilton, and represent Wilton and New Canaan. So that's the second reason why I'm running. The third reason comes to my skill set. When I talk to people, there's three issues that they face, that they talk about, that they're passionate about. First is, don't underestimate the power of Donald Trump in this election. People are really unhappy, and they don't know what to do. And they will then vote Democratic because that's the only thing left for them to do, even when they are unaffiliated or Republican. Second thing is the state of Connecticut. They are worried about Connecticut. They wonder what's going to happen in Connecticut. They're worried about its fiscal stability, its fiscal future, and what will happen here. And so that's a second piece that's really important. The last is all about the issues we face as traditional Democrats. And so pay equity, women's right to choose, women's reproductive health, the things that we have in our society to make it a just society, a place where there's due process, where people can stand up and be counted and be included. Those are things that are important. They get a little lost in, oh my gosh, the state is in trouble, but those things are important and they come to the fore. So I decided to run because my skill set is something that Connecticut needs. I spent 18 years at Pfizer. My last job there was leadership development. Not very much of a political background, but a very important background because we have a leadership gap in this country and in this state. The second thing I did is I went to GE, did leadership and communication for GE Capital. Then I went and I now have my own executive coaching business, and I've been teaching at Columbia for the last 22 years. It's not a political background, it's a skill set that helps people come together, understand what needs to happen, how do you build consensus, partner, collaborate, and then move to the future. That's what they need in Hartford, and that is my skill set that takes me there. The last part is around me versus Tom O'Day, and that is, as he's moved through the Republican ranks, he's become more and more to the right. So the things that we consider important, whether it's pay equity, women's right to choose, so I'm endorsed by Planned Parenthood, he's not. gives you some of the ideas of what differentiates me from him and why I am standing in front of you as a Democratic candidate for state representative. So those are some of the things that I bring to the party and some of the things that I will ask you to help me as I run for office. Now I'm going to spend a moment about running for office because this has been an incredible process. And there's two pieces I need to add, and then I'll take questions. The first is my personal experience. So in running for office, you do things that you haven't done before. So in Wilton, I always go up to the cemetery, and we get the flyover, we get the speeches, and it's a wonderful, moving experience. I went to New Canaan Memorial Day weekend to Lakeview Cemetery, and they have a big event where all of New Canaan goes out, plants flags in veterans' graves. They put the flags next to the headstones. I'm standing there, surrounded by a couple of kids from the high school, putting a flag in someone's, at the headstone of someone's grave. And I realized that this guy was willing to die for my right to run for office. This person was willing to die so I have the right to vote and we have a free society. And I'm sitting there going, I'm putting the flag on top of this guy's grave. And it's a transformational moment. You run for office for all the right things, you get permission from your wife, you get help from your friends, you do all sorts of things, but suddenly you're putting a flag and this guy was willing to die so we could be free. And it's all about you and that person. So that's one of the things that's so important to me that motivates me to make such a difference and to win this election. Now I can't do it without you. See this button? This button was made by someone in Ridgefield. She can't vote for me. But Karen Casey said to me, I can't vote for you, but I can make you a button. You know, it takes everybody. And so she made me a button. Someone from Westport was one of my best drivers. There are people throughout this entire area that are helping me, that are coming out of the woodwork to say, Ross, you belong as a state representative. You've got the stuff to do it. But I'm running against a guy who's out of New Canaan. 50% of New Canaan are registered Republicans. In Wilton, it's a different number. In New Canaan, it equals the number of unaffiliated and Democrats. So each person here needs to have a conversation. I've been on 2,000 doors. I'm going to knock on at least 2,000 doors more, and maybe I'll get William Tong's target of 6,000. But it takes a conversation from each person to multiply it across. So without you, I can't do it. With you, Tom O'Day is toast. So thank you very much. I really appreciate the time. Happy to take questions.